You know when someone hears your birthday passed recently and they ask you how it feels to be that age? Like, how does it feel to be 14? How does it feel to be 29? I have never had an answer. When my age does flip from an odd number to an even, or an even number to an odd, the effect of that change is impalpable to me. My progress over the last year is masked by my most recent days. I always want to have an answer though. I want to be able to give a shining report of the new data I've downloaded, the files refreshed, the folders updated in my inner world by turning a new age. I want to be able to report on all of those developments when asked, because reciprocally, I want to know from others how life does or does not refresh at 56 or 47 or 35. So this is it. This video, it's my answer, how it feels to be 27. A record of this mark on the doorframe.
Thank you to Skillshare for the birthday gift of supporting my channel as the sponsor of today's video. Whatever age you are, you might be asking yourself, what's next? And Skillshare's aim is to help you find yourself in new possibilities beyond your 9 to 5. Same. If you watched my Q&A from December, you'll know I shared that one skill I wanted to focus on this year was DJing, and I was pleased to turn to Skillshare to provide the structure for that learning. I have been spending 15 minutes a day mixing, and their learning path allows me to take one small piece of it per day so I don't get overwhelmed. I've also been stuck on an embroidery project for a friend for almost a year now, and their course on texture and hand embroidery saved me from abandoning ship. And if you feel resistance to exploring new fields like these, they even have a Julia Cameron-esque course on creative confidence and overcoming the inner critic that many of us have struggled with. So unblock yourself. You can explore the entire Skillshare class library completely free for a month on me by being one of the first 1,000 people to use my link in the description.
So what do I know now that I'm 27? Well, relationships are plastic. When you're in your youth, the plasticity of your relationships is so abundant you hardly even recognize that it's a factor present. It's just all around you. Like, I picked up friendships constantly. Girl Scouts, theater camp, school, after-school programs, you barely had to pay attention to keep friendships going because so many were entering and exiting your world at once. I even had like a makeshift rotational friendship program going on at the church I grew up at because I could not keep a friend for more than 9 to 12 months before their family would move cities or decide to stop loading up the minivan on Sundays or join a different church. But the space they left was always so quickly filled by a new smiling face that the loss didn't feel so bad. Companionship was everywhere. The senior trumpet player in my band class that I was buddies with would graduate, and then just like that, a new freshman would pop up the next year, magically filling the spot he left in my social life. It was only after I graduated college that the friendships I had made up until that point started to stiffen, and I began to feel stuck. Suddenly, the abundance of friendships I had formed started to feel heavy. Like, how am I possibly going to keep these relationships buoyant when we're not all floating on one campus together anymore? And so, some treasured friendships sank. Our texting fell off, times we would see each other in passing faded away, and then within a few years I'd realized we were no longer even doing the very basic replies to each other's Instagram stories. And that felt bad. And that felt bad. And then the bad feeling would fester, and the guilt of not putting in the work would eat at me until I just relinquished all possibility of reaching out and buried it. But in the last year, I've seen 2 sets of relationships I had let go find their way back to me. The first was with my friend Joelle, my first friend at USC. We were so close for the first few years of college, and then I felt myself pulling away unfairly at the end of it. I just did not put the effort in for multiple bad reasons, knowing it was immature behavior at the time, but not doing anything about it. I felt awful about it after college, to the point where if someone had asked me the worst thing I'd ever done, my answer would be the way I gave up on my friendship with Joelle. The regret gnawed at me, and I did text her once a few years out of school to no response, which just cemented the feeling that she surely hated me and harbored contempt about my actions, until a random day a few months ago when she messaged me out of the blue to tell me that I would win Survivor. random. I read that text in bad faith and assumed it was because I was a conniving, manipulative person, but I still responded and asked why, saying that it was good to hear from her. And it turned out she had a whole 3-pronged analysis for why I'd make such a great contestant. And thank God she did, because I took that opportunity to ask for a call to apologize for my poor friendship behavior, but she stopped me in my tracks. She was completely unaware of what behavior I was talking about. As it turned out, she felt no ill will towards me and chalked the way our friendship went to just the busyness of life. I felt so relieved, and we ended up FaceTiming later that week, which was so healing. An imagined rift resolved. The second time something similar happened was with my cousins. I grew up on the other side of the country from all of my extended family, and after my grandparents died 10 years ago, we just stopped visiting. So I hadn't seen most of my extended family since middle school. And after all that time away from my cousins, I had pretty much counted out ever being good friends with them. Until we planned a mini reunion in Seattle. This past August, 2 of my cousins and my aunt and my uncle came out, and it was delightful to see them again. I was worried initially about the awkwardness of rebuilding a friendship with quasi-strangers that you haven't hung out with since you were 13, but our bond returned after just a couple of nights of trading crazy family stories around a campfire. Now my cousin Meredith and I FaceTime, we text, and she's coming to stay with me in September. I feel genuine friendship from her beyond the sort of familial obligation. And again, it's been so healing and restorative for me. Both of these events have made the elasticity of relationships so evident to me at 27. Most of them can snap back into place if you let go of the rubber band you've been resigned to holding on to for so long. Next, 27 is also accepting that I'm a slow burn. Like, I don't move dramatically in this life. I don't. And I've become more resolute in that actually being really core in who I am. I'm just more of a slow burn. And it's touched many aspects of my life at 27. It took me 4 years from my first visit to Seattle, where I was already determined to move there, to actually do it. It took me 2 years to convince myself to leave a job that wasn't right for me anymore. It took me 8 months of mulling it over to dye my hair red. And in all of those instances, I really thought I was being so impulsive. I could lament that time seemingly wasted while I was at a standstill with those decisions, but the truth is I was never really at a standstill. I was slowly burning on them. And when people ask me if I wish I had made those moves sooner, I always answer no. Like, I really trust the timing of my life, and at 27, I just know that it takes me longer to feel ready for something. At 27, I can appreciate the gradual buildup that at 17 I might be impatient or frustrated by in myself. Even looking at my YouTube growth, it's been splattered with a few viral hits, but mostly slow, sustained attention. I'm much more meant for things to unfold a little more incrementally. At 27, I'm done rushing. When I do, it's how I spill my food, trip, or get a speeding ticket. Rushing is not going to be faster always. It's reckless. 27 has also instilled in me that problem solving inspires confidence more than it does fear. Historically, I've never looked forward to problem solving. I don't enjoy troubleshooting. I'm neurotic, and I will go to great lengths to try and guarantee that nothing goes wrong. This may be the age, though, where I'll finally accept that things will go wrong, because I've spent 26 years contorting myself under the impression that the perfect person could prevent calamities. If I were just a little bit better, nothing bad would happen. But over the last year, I've come to terms with the possibility that since I do experience calamities, I might not be perfect. I can't do everything right. Stepping through this inevitable truth, I found myself in a place where I actually came to appreciate the burn marks on a foiled plan, where I actually came to appreciate the rips and tears in the fabric of life, to appreciate the view of the sky as you slip backwards on the metaphorical banana peel. Nothing cut this deeper into me than one such calamity last fall. Instagram saw the live updates as this happened, but When I took my mom to Italy last summer, our Flixbus pulled away from a rest stop with all of our luggage, our purses, our passports, and our wallets, but without us. So there we were, standing in a rural Italian gas station with nothing but our phones, my mom's driver's license, a thermos of tea, a bottle of water, and a small baggie of pocket change, which, as you can imagine, was very distressing to me. The bus that we were on was continuing on to Munich after dropping passengers off in Milan, and we didn't have the funds or legal documentation to follow it to Germany. I had seemingly few skills to handle this situation. My mom knew high school French, I knew high school Spanish, but neither of us spoke Italian. Flixbus didn't have an immediate support number on their website for these types of situations, and this was 60 miles outside of the city. There's no subway or buses in sight. So I panicked until I had to just do something. So I submitted support tickets on their website. Then I decided that those weren't immediate enough. So I found a Flixbus support number on Reddit and I called it, and they picked up, refusing to have the bus turn around or have it leave our luggage at the station in Milan. The gas station attendants we were with were supportive though, and Google Translate just barely cut through the language barrier enough to have them call us a taxi. The taxi driver didn't accept credit cards though, but his daughter over WhatsApp agreed to have us PayPal her the cab fare. Once the taxi dropped us off at the bus station in Milan, our bus had already came and left 20 minutes before. But I was determined, and I begged a different Flixbus driver to give us our bus driver's info. We got in contact, and miraculously, he agreed to save our items and send them with a different driver going back to Milan the next day. We happily slept for a night in Como with our contacts in and clothes from the lost and found on our bodies, and the next day, every single item was returned to us. This is actually a simplification of the whole story because all in all, I probably jumped through 93 different hoops to find a solution to this problem that I never expected we'd even have to solve. I had expected that luggage would be lost on the flight over to Europe, but never on a bus. I could have never predicted this issue coming up, and even if I had, who's to say the training I had put in to avoid it would have panned out? But none of that mattered. We were capable. We weren't hurt. We had Apple Pay on our phones. Everything worked out. And now when people ask me about that trip, this luggage chase is the most salient memory from it. Even if you do get hurt, it'll still work out. On a very magical and beloved trip to Mexico City in November, I ended up spending our last night in the Coyoacan emergency room because I happened to kick over a tall glass of water in the living room of our Airbnb while singing an a cappella rendition of White Winter Hymnal with my friends. Again, of all the things I spent time worrying about before leaving for the trip, this incident was not one of them. I was fearful of COVID, of the group dynamics on the trip, of the weather in Mexico City, not about navigating the Mexican healthcare system. I barely had to navigate it though, because my friends were endlessly and immaculately supportive. The second I got cut, there were hands putting pressure on my wound, shirts being ripped into tourniquets, voices communicating in elementary Spanish, shoulders and arms lifting me into Ubers, and little jokes comforting me in what felt like a deeply embarrassing and shameful moment. I felt like I had ruined the trip, tainted it, become a burden, but these feelings were quickly supplanted by my incalculable gratitude for the grace and compassion and selflessness of the people I have surrounded myself with at this age. I know now that I don't need to be fearful of everything going wrong because it's not just on me to make it right. I had the support of nurses, doctors, Uber drivers, friends, Italian Instagram followers, my mom. So these calamities don't intimidate me anymore. The problem solving that I've done, not just on a once-in-a-lifetime trip, but in my little everyday life, has instilled a confidence in me that I'm smart and adaptive and flexible and can call on others for support. And thanks to a piece of glass, I will have this lesson scarred on my foot forever. Hopefully that means it'll never leave me. Which brings me to permanence, because I realized that I have some deep-seated issues with permanence that I haven't dealt with until 27. I am in no way a fully evolved, self-actualized person, and there are still areas of my life that feel like obstacles a little too tall for all 5'10" of me to get over.
I spent my 24th, 25th, and 26th years in recovery for my relationship to achievement and self-criticism.
And now I'm recognizing some repair is needed with my relationship to permanence at 27. My tension with permanence is confusing for me because on one hand, I love to commit. And on the other, I'm very bad at quitting things. So you'd think an everlasting commitment that I can never quit would excite me. Wrong. Tattoos, mortgages, pets, kids, surgery, they all scare me. But if you invite me on a trip, I'm there. If I sign up for a 12-week woodworking class, I'm showing up to every single one. If I start volunteering with a new organization, it's so hard to pull me away. And that dissonance with commitment has been difficult for me. I want to cover my body in beautiful inky artwork and share my life with a little animal and put down roots for a 15 to 30 year housing agreement, but I just can't do it. The permanence intimidates me. I know that nothing truly lasts forever and that your relationship to things changes over time, but there's a big part of me that can't accept either of those things. I want to be able to hold the same attitude I had towards something at day 1 on day 10,000, which is unreasonable, myopic, and ill-formed, but it's how I feel. If something's in my life permanently, then I have this need for my feelings toward it to be permanent too. Maybe in my video turning 37, I'll spend a few minutes in a section like this explaining how I adapted my fear of permanence, but until then, I'll be wrestling with it. 27-year-old me has also come to evangelize the Japanese principle of beauty in imperfection, or wabi-sabi. That hole in your sweater, when darned, is even more unique than the state it originally came to you in. The glass lamp that you broke and glued back together now has a geometric pattern that the light illuminates. Visual interest. The stain on your coffee table might bother you at first, but it's more a birthmark than a blemish. Something that seems irreversible doesn't always need to be reversed to be worthy again. You can progress it forward and make something even more full out of it. 27 means valuing intergenerational relationships for me. This time last year, I was in a book club with a dear subscriber who mentioned how she got lunch with a writing friend of hers that was in her 40s or 50s, stating how precious that time and that friendship was to her. Since then, I've had my eyes on developing intergenerational relationships with those around me. At 26, I felt like there were entire age ranges of relationships that had fallen out from under me. All 4 of my grandparents are no longer living. I moved far away from my parents and their friends. I don't have kids, and I don't have friends with kids. I do have relationships with friends 5 years older than me, though, and those are so indelibly meaningful to me. So why wasn't I associating with my elders or my youngers? Making relationships so pointedly is difficult, though. However, on a cool day in August, pulling into a grove of trees deep in the Washington wilderness, I found myself rooted in intergenerational joy. You see, I'd signed me and my friend up for what I thought would be a week-long trail work trip amongst 35-year-olds, only to be rewarded with the presence of 3 kindred spirits, 40 to 50 years my elders. At first, I was concerned. What will we talk about uninterrupted for 8 days? Will these 3 septuagenarians get our sense of humor? Are we going to feel like inferior or trivialized by them? But before these worries could even metastasize, our rapport formed beneath me. I can't even begin to tell you how transformational it was to see 3 65 to 75-year-olds running up mountains and doing back-breaking trail work, sawing logs and clearing trails, shoveling and stamping and hacking away for hours a day. I often fear for my mobility in my older age, but it was clear from their stories of hiking the PCT, the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide, that backpacking and time outdoors did not leave with their youth. Every night around the campfire, I felt like I was watching a Statler and Waldorf routine from the Muppets, tears just pouring down my face at the comedy unfolding in front of me. When it came time to leave and pack up camp, it was clear that none of us really wanted to part ways, all living easily 2+ hours away from each other. But after 8 days together, we eventually pulled our Subarus in different directions, and even though I might not see them for a very long time, those relationships are so cherished in my life and bring me hope for more local intergenerational relationships to come. At 27, I'm also reckoning with the difficulty of self-acceptance. Formerly, I let everyone around me take care of my validation instead of taking on that work myself. I want to get to a point where my own self-adulation is the highest praise that I can receive, where I turn inwards and not outwards for my sense of what is right. This also doesn't mean shutting myself off to the kind words of strangers or sweet comments from friends, but looking to myself for the advice and direction I need before I look elsewhere. At 27, I have settled what my life's work is. And it's connection. Being around people and having stimulating conversations makes me buzz. And there's no greater euphoria than bringing all of those people together. It's when I feel at my best and for sure at my highest. I think I was searching for some really specific but also abstract life's purpose. But at this very moment, it's simple. Connection keeps me going. It's what excites me, motivates me, sustains me.
What would you tell someone if they asked you what your age means to you?
Leave it below because I want to know. And if you liked this kind of video, I share epiphanies like these monthly on my podcast, Revelatorium, if you want to check it out. Also, one like on this video is one prayer that I don't fall victim to the 27 Club, because that's real. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all next time, and Katherout.